BS English students. Dr. Khalid Malik, the founder, has a PhD in applied linguistics TESOL. He taught at many foreign universities with 25 research papers, 6 books on linguistics, and has a postdoc fellowship abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966 Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at BS English. Course title, Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology. Level, BS second semester. Title, Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology. Course code, ELL105. Question 8. Phonetics.
Phonetics, from the Greek word phen, is the branch of linguistics that deals with the physical production and reception of sound. We call these distinct sounds phones. Phonetics is not concerned with the meaning of sounds, but instead focuses on the production, transmission, and reception of sound. It is a universal study and is not specific to any particular language. An example of two phonetic sounds is the two th sounds in English. There is the voiceless fricative theta, and the voiced fricative. One is used to transcribe words like think, k, and path, p Latin letter e, and the other is used for words like them, m, and brother, brr. Phonetics is a branch of linguistics that studies how humans produce and perceive sounds, or in the case of sign languages, the equivalent aspects of sign. Linguists who specialize in studying the physical properties of speech are phoneticians. The field of phonetics is traditionally divided into 3 subdisciplines based on the research questions involved, such as how humans plan and execute movements to produce speech, articulatory phonetics, how various movements affect the properties of the resulting sound, acoustic phonetics, or how humans convert sound waves to linguistic information, auditory phonetics. Traditionally, the minimal linguistic unit of phonetics is the phone, a speech sound in a language which differs from the phonological unit of phoneme. The phoneme is an abstract categorization of phones, and it is also defined as the smallest unit that discerns meaning between sounds in any given language. Phonetics deals with 2 aspects of human speech: production, the ways humans make sounds, and perception, the way speech is understood. The communicative modality of a language describes the method by which a language produces and perceives languages. Languages with oral modalities such as English produce speech orally, using the mouth, and perceive speech orally, using the ears. Sign languages, such as Australian Sign Language, AUSLAN, and American Sign Language, ASL, have a manual visual modality, producing speech manually, using the hands, and perceiving speech visually, using the eyes. ASL and some other sign languages have in addition a manual dialect for use in tactile signing by deafblind speakers, where signs are produced with the hands and perceived with the hands as well. Language production consists of several interdependent processes which transform a non-linguistic message into a spoken, or signed linguistic signal. After identifying a message to be linguistically encoded, a speaker must select the individual words, known as lexical items, to represent that message in a process called lexical selection. During phonological encoding, the mental representation of the words are assigned their phonological content as a sequence of phonemes to be produced. The phonemes are specified for articulatory features which denote particular goals, such as closed lips or the tongue in a particular location. These phonemes are then coordinated into a sequence of muscle commands that can be sent to the muscles, and when these commands are executed properly, the intended sounds are produced. Articulation: these movements disrupt and modify an airstream which results in a sound wave. The modification is done by the articulators, with different places and manners of articulation producing different acoustic results. For example, the words tack and sack both begin with alveolar sounds in English, but differ in how far the tongue is from the alveolar ridge. This difference has large effects on the airstream and thus the sound that is produced. Similarly, the direction and source of the airstream can affect the sound. The most common airstream mechanism is pulmonic, using the lungs, but the glottis and tongue can also be used to produce airstreams. Decoding, language perception is the process by which a linguistic signal is decoded and understood by a listener. In order to perceive speech, the continuous acoustic signal must be converted into discrete linguistic units such as phonemes, morphemes, and words. In order to correctly identify and categorize sounds, listeners prioritize certain aspects of the signal that can reliably distinguish between linguistic categories. While certain cues are prioritized over others, many aspects of the signal can contribute to perception. For example, though oral languages prioritize acoustic information, the McGurk effect shows that visual information is used to distinguish ambiguous information when the acoustic cues are unreliable. Phonetics and linguistics. Phonetics studies speech sounds from different viewpoints and is broken down into three categories that are studied in linguistics. Or we can say that modern phonetics has three branches. Articulatory phonetics, which addresses the way sounds are made with the articulators. Acoustic phonetics, which addresses the acoustic results of different articulations, and auditory phonetics, which addresses the way listeners perceive and understand linguistic signals. Articulatory phonetics, the production of speech sounds. Acoustic phonetics, the physical way speech sounds travel. Auditory phonetics, the way people perceive speech sounds. Phonetics and phonics are often used interchangeably, but they are not quite the same. Phonics is a teaching method that helps students associate sounds with letters and is an essential part of teaching reading skills. Articulatory phonetics. Articulatory phonetics is the study of how humans use their speech organs to produce specific sounds. Articulatory phonetics is concerned with the way sounds are created and aims to explain how we move our speech organs, articulators, to produce certain sounds. Generally speaking, articulatory phonetics looks at how aerodynamic energy, airflow through the vocal tract, is transformed into acoustic energy, sound. Humans can produce sound simply by expelling air from the lungs. However, we can produce, and pronounce, a large number of different sounds by moving and manipulating our speech organs, articulators. Our speech organs are lips, teeth, tongue, palate, uvula, the teardrop-shaped soft tissue that hangs at the back of your throat, nasal and oral cavities, vocal cords, pronunciation in phonetics. Usually, two speech organs make contact with each other to affect the airflow and create a sound. The point where the two speech organs make the most contact is named the place of articulation. The way in which the contact forms and then releases is named the manner of articulation. Let's look at the P sound as an example. To produce the P sound, we join our lips together tightly, place of articulation. This causes a slight buildup of air, which is then released when the lips part, manner of articulation, creating a burst of sound associated with the letter P in English. In English, there are two main sounds we create, consonants and vowels. Consonants are speech sounds created by the partial or total closure of the vocal tract. In contrast, vowels are speech sounds produced without stricture in the vocal tract, meaning the vocal tract is open and the air can escape without generating a fricative or plosive sound. Consonants. A consonant is a speech sound which is pronounced by stopping the air from flowing easily through the mouth, especially by closing the lips or touching the teeth with the tongue. Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary. The study of the production of consonant sounds can be divided into three areas: voice, place of articulation, and manner of articulation. Voice. In articulatory phonetics, voice refers to the presence or absence of vibration of the vocal cords. There are two types of sound. Voiceless sounds, these are made when the air passes through the vocal folds, with no vibration during the production of sounds, like guess, as in sip. Voiced sounds, these are made when the air passes through the vocal folds, with vibration during the production of sounds like z, as in zip. Practice. Put your hand on your throat and make the S and Z sounds in succession. Which one produces the vibration? Place of articulation. The place of articulation refers to the point where the construction of airflow takes place. There are 7 different types of sounds based on the place of articulation. Bilabial, sounds produced with both lips, such as P, B, M. Labiodentals, sounds produced with the upper teeth and the lower lip, such as F and V. Interdental, sounds produced with the tongue in between the upper and lower teeth, such as theta, the th sound in think. Alveolar, sounds produced with the tongue at or near the ridge right behind upper front teeth, such as T, D, S. Palatal, sounds produced at the hard palate or the roof of the mouth, such as J, measure, should. Velars, sounds produced at the velum or soft palate, such as K and G. Glottals, sounds produced at the glottis or the space between the vocal folds, such as H, or the glottal stop sound, as in O. Manner of articulation. Manner of articulation examines the arrangement and interaction between the articulators, speech organs, during the production of speech sounds. In phonetics, speech sounds can be divided into 5 different types based on the manner of articulation. Plosive, aka stops, sounds made by the obstruction and release of the airstream from the lungs. Plosive sounds are harsh sounds, such as P, T, K, B, D, G. Fricative, sounds formed when 2 articulators come close but don't touch, forming a small gap in the vocal tract. Since the airflow is obstructed, this small gap generates audible friction, such as F, V, Z, theta. Affricate sounds, these sounds are the result of plosive and fricative sounds happening in rapid succession. For example, the affricate T represents T plus, just as the affricate D results from D plus. The first of these is unvoiced and the second is voiced. Nasal sounds, produced when the air passes through the nasal cavity instead of out through the mouth, such as M, N. Approximant, sounds made with partial obstruction of the airflow from the mouth. This means some sounds are coming out of the nose and some from the mouth, such as L, W, J. Vowels. A vowel is a speech sound produced when the breath flows out through the mouth without being blocked by the teeth, tongue, or lips. Cambridge Learner's Dictionary. Linguists describe vowel sounds according to 3 criteria: height, backness, and roundness. Coming out of the nose and some from the mouth, such as L, W, J. Height. Height refers to how high or low the tongue is in the mouth when producing a vowel. For example, consider the vowel sounds, as in sit, and A, as in cat. If you say both of these vowels in succession, you should feel your tongue going up and down. In terms of height, vowels are either considered high vowels, mid vowels, or low vowels. As in bit is an example of a high vowel. As in bed is an example of a mid vowel. As in hot is an example of a low vowel. Backness. Backness focuses on the horizontal movement of the tongue. Consider the 2 vowels, as in sit, and u, as in umbrella, and pronounce them one after the other. Your tongue should be moving forward and backwards. In terms of backness, vowels are either considered front vowels, central vowels, or back vowels. I happy smiley as in feel, is an example of a front vowel. As in again, is an example of a central vowel. You happy smiley as in boot, is an example of a back vowel. Roundedness. Roundedness refers to whether or not the lips are rounded or unrounded when producing the vowel sound. When we pronounce rounded vowels, our lips are open and extended to some degree. An example of a rounded vowel is, as in put. When we pronounce unrounded vowels, our lips are spread and the corners of the mouth are pulled back to some degree. An example of an unrounded vowel is, as in bit. Acoustic phonetics. Acoustic phonetics is the study of how speech sounds travel, from the moment they are produced by the speaker until they reach the listener's ear. Acoustic phonetics looks at the physical properties of sound, including the frequency, intensity, and duration, and analyses how sound is transmitted. When sound is produced, it creates a sound wave that travels through the acoustic medium. This is usually the air, but it could also be water, wood, metal, etc. A sound can travel through anything except a vacuum. When the sound wave reaches our eardrums, it causes them to vibrate. Our auditory system then converts these vibrations into neural impulses. We experience these neural impulses as sound. Sound wave, a pressure wave that causes particles in the surrounding acoustic medium to vibrate. Linguists examine the movement of sound by studying the sound waves that are created during speech. There are 4 different properties of sound waves: wavelength, period, amplitude, and frequency. Wavelength. The wavelength refers to the distance between the crests, highest points, of the sound wave. This indicates the distance the sound travels before it repeats itself. Period. The period of a sound wave refers to the amount of time it takes for the sound to create a complete wave cycle. Amplitude. The amplitude of a sound wave is represented in height. When the sound is very loud, the amplitude of the sound wave is high. On the other hand, when the sound is quiet, the amplitude is low. Frequency. The frequency refers to the number of waves produced per second. In general, low-frequency sounds produce sound waves less often than high-frequency sounds. The frequency of sound waves is measured in Hz/Hz. Auditory phonetics. Auditory phonetics is the study of how people hear speech sounds. It is concerned with speech perception. This branch of phonetics studies the reception and response to speech sounds, mediated by the ears, the auditory nerves, and the brain. While the properties of acoustic phonetics are objectively measurable, the auditory sensations examined in auditory phonetics are more subjective, and are typically studied by asking listeners to report on their perceptions. Thus, auditory phonetics studies the relationship between speech and the listener's interpretation. Let's look at the basics of how our auditory and hearing system works. As sound waves travel through the acoustic medium, they cause the molecules around them to vibrate. When these vibrating molecules reach your ear, they cause the eardrum to vibrate too. This vibration travels from the eardrum to 3 small bones within the middle ear: the mallet, the incus, and the stirrup. The vibration is carried to the inner ear and into the cochlea via the stirrup. The cochlea is a small snail shell-shaped chamber within the inner ear, which contains the sensory organ of hearing. The cochlea converts the vibrations into neural signals, which are then transmitted to the brain. It is in the brain where the vibrations are identified as actual sound. Auditory phonetics can be particularly useful in the medical field, as not everyone can easily decipher different sounds. For instance, some people suffer from auditory processing disorder, APD, which is a disconnect between hearing and processing sounds. For example, if you asked a person who suffers from auditory processing disorder, "Can you close the door?" they may hear something like, "Can you dose the paw?" instead, as the disorder makes it more difficult to decipher sounds. Phonetic sounds and symbols. To transcribe phonetic sounds into symbols, we use the International Phonetic Alphabet. The International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, is a system for representing phonetic sounds, phones, with symbols. It helps us transcribe and analyze speech sounds. The International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, was developed by the language teacher Paul Parsi in 1888 and is a system of phonetic symbols based primarily on Latin script. The chart was initially developed as a way of accurately representing speech sounds. The IPA aims to represent all qualities of speech and sounds present in language, including phones, phonemes, intonation, gaps between sounds, and syllables. The IPA symbols consist of letter-like symbols, diacritics, or both. Diacritics equals small symbols added to a phonetic symbol, such as accents or cedillas, that show slight distinctions in sounds and pronunciation. It is important to note that the IPA is not specific to any particular language and can be used globally to help language learners. The IPA was created to help describe sounds, phones, not phonemes. However, the chart is often used for phonemic transcription. The IPA itself is big. Therefore, when studying the English language, we would most likely use a phonemic chart, based on the IPA, which only represents the 44 English phonemes. Phones vs. phonemes. A phone is a physical sound. When you speak, make a sound, you produce phones. Phones are written between square brackets. A phoneme, on the other hand, is the mental representation and meaning we associate with that sound. Phonemes are written between slashes, //. Transcribing phones. When we describe phones, we use narrow transcription, to include as many aspects of a specific pronunciation as possible, and place the letters and symbols between two square brackets. Phonetic, narrow, transcriptions give us lots of information about how to physically produce sounds. For example, the word port has an audible exhalation of air after the letter P. This is shown in the phonetic transcription with A, and the word port in phonetic transcript would look like this, PT. Let's take a look at some more examples of phonetic transcription. Head, HD. Shoulders, LDZ. Knees, NIS. And ND. Toes, TZ. Transcribing phonemes. When describing phonemes, we use broad transcription, only mentioning the most notable and necessary sounds, and place the letters and symbols between two slashes, //. For example, the English word apple would look like this, a Latin letter AEPL. Here are some further examples of phonemic transcriptions. Head, HD. Shoulders, LDZ. Knees, NIS. And ND. Toes, TZ. As you can see, both transcriptions are very similar, as they follow the IPA. However, look closely, and you will see some diacritics in the phonetic transcriptions that do not appear in the phonemic transcriptions. These diacritics provide a few more details about how to pronounce the actual sounds. Why do we need the International Phonetic Alphabet? In English, the same letters in a word can represent different sounds, or have no sound at all. Therefore, the spelling of a word is not always a reliable representation of how to pronounce it. The IPA shows the letters in a word as sound symbols, allowing us to write a word as it sounds, rather than as it is spelt. For example, tulip becomes a tejulp. The IPA is very helpful when studying a second language. It can help learners understand how to pronounce words correctly, even when the new language uses a different alphabet to their native language. Phonetics, key takeaways. Phonetics is the branch of linguistics that deals with the physical production and reception of sounds. Phonetics studies speech from different viewpoints and is broken down into three categories: articulatory phonetics, acoustic phonetics, and auditory phonetics. Articulatory phonetics is concerned with the way speech sounds are created and aims to explain how we move our speech organs, articulators, to produce certain sounds. Acoustic phonetics is the study of the way speech sounds travel, from the moment they are produced by the speaker until they reach the listener's ear. Auditory phonetics studies the reception and response to speech sounds, mediated by the ears, the auditory nerves, and the brain. The International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, is a system for representing phonetic sounds, phones, with symbols. It helps us pronounce words correctly.
Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. Khalid Malik, the founder, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. He taught at many foreign universities with 25 research papers, 6 books on linguistics, and in a postdoc fellowship abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at